My name's Tev Sanders. I'm based in the Raleigh area. I live in Apex. Long-time IT guy. I've been almost 3 decades. I spent almost 20 years at Microsoft. And today we're going to talk about how you can really, I like to think of them as Lego building blocks, right? I was a big fan. My son was a big fan of Legos. We stick them together and build all sorts of things. And so we're really going to hone in on that and share some areas that we think are important. And obviously you heard from the state of North Carolina and what they think is important. So I'm gonna make sure my screen sharing gets out for everyone. And so when you talk about the building blocks, here's a way that kind of Tanium looks at that. We are used in 30 million endpoints around the world. We're used in quite a few states. I think we have footprints in close to 10 states, several counties, several schools, both in the higher ed side and the K-12 side, sheriff's offices, water districts, you name it. Pretty much Tanium is being widely used. And as we get into environments and start looking at them, we really focus in on the bottom part of this puzzle as we start to build out a secure infrastructure for customers. And so I'm going to really focus on the bottom part, getting into some of these other areas and highlight them. And if you have any questions, any comments, anything like that, please do put those in the chat. I've got a fellow peer, Mike Ryder, who's helping us out in chat, and he is going to either answer them in chat or throw me questions over the scenario. So we are looking at the Tanium console. The Tanium console itself is it's a single console. It's any modern web browser will suffice. So you don't have to load up a Win32 console or some other oddball thing to get the console active. In our web environment, in our test environment, we have about 1,000 machines. You can see here, they've actually reported and are online. And over on the right-hand side, you can see we've got a lot of unmanaged network interfaces, which we're going to talk about. But with the power of Tanium and how quickly it works, which is one of the reasons I came to Tanium, I did a lot of operational stuff on the Microsoft side, helping customers with patches and stuff. And there were some products that we had, but they took a while. Well, Tanium doesn't. So I can get I can go into what I call our Google search bar and ask a question. So I can do things like get computer name. And I'm going to misspell name because I want you to see automatically we're going to give you some suggestions for that. You're not having to sit there and learn query language, anything like that. So I'm going to select this first one. And what's happening right now in real time is that we are going to each individual machine and asking it a question. We're not going to some database, some storage mechanism. We're actually going out to the endpoint and say, hey, give us your computer name. So quickly we see that returned, and that's where the Tanium architecture really comes into play. That's one of the secret ingredients we have, is that we have a single cloud service, a single console, a single agent gets put on the endpoints, and that agent basically talks back to the cloud service. So if it's internal, we're going to kind of share the load. If it's external, if they're out at working from home, or if they're at a Starbucks, we basically will be able to manage that machine, get patches to it, ask questions about it, inventory that, you name it, all using the Tanium architecture. And we do this very quickly. One of the examples that we like to refer to is the WannaCry breakout that happened a few years back. Were used by the Air Force, and this is actually a public record video where they patched WannaCry in 41 minutes around the globe at the Air Force, so several 100,000 nodes. So that kind of speed and scale is something that most any customer will be able to manage, and it doesn't really matter the scale. So if you're 100 seats, if you're 1,000 seats, if you're 10,000 seats, we'll take care of you. And we can keep going on asking information. So if I want to get IP addresses, or if I want to get memory, right? I can get all that information from the machine, so I can quickly see, what is out there, what is available, and most importantly, after I get this information, if I wanted to look at this machine more, I can quickly go down and deploy an action. So I could patch a machine. I could send some threat hunting mechanisms out to kill processes if we knew this machine was compromised. I could send that information out, but I'm quickly able to get this information. And that is the cornerstone of Tanium, is real-time information at your fingertips, being able to find it, but also turn around and fix it. So it's not just, hey, finding a report, sending over to the ops team and say, hey, go fix this. It's actually being able to do it within the Tanium console and not having kind of different data silos around that. And so as customers start using Tanium, one of the things that they'll start looking at is, how do I find things on my network? So most of the time we ask customers, hey, how many machines do you have? What kind of things do you have on your network? They often say, well, the numbers between 10,000 and 15,000, or the numbers 22,000, maybe 28,000. Oftentimes we find 10 to 40% more machines than the customers actually have told us they have. And the way we do that is through our Discover process. We don't do centralized we do centralized discovery, but a majority of our discovery mechanisms come from our agents themselves, those endpoints, and they're able to basically scan on their local subnet to tell you if a machine's out there, if a machine's not out there, if that machine has a Tanium agent, does it not have a Tanium agent, does it have other security tools on it, right? We're able to report all that information by using Discovery, and we basically turn each machine into a mini scanner and give you a rich data set. So we're able to go out, discover the interfaces on your network, determine if they're managed, that means they have a Tanium client, if they're unmanaged, or if they're lost, right? We have this concept of neighborhood watch, where a Tanium agent will report, hey, the machine next to it was reporting yesterday, but now it's not reporting, but it's still responding on the network. So we're able to really go in and show you what's out there, what's available. We do a couple different scenarios as far as the profiles. We can do, if you look at here, we can go out and do something simple as just pulling the ARP cache and what we call a passive connection out there. And here you see the data that we'll return from that, right? We only get kind of 3 things out of this data list and the platforms we support. But if we start doing active pings, then we can actually get more information and return that back. And then we get into more of an active scan mode, where we are actually going out, getting more information, and then finally the OS fingerprinting and OS detection and port scanning, where we can really get out and tell you what's on your network. And we basically take this information, collate it up into what you saw before in Discover, and tell you which interfaces you have out there, right? Which is great. We're telling you you've got some Apple interfaces out there, you've got some Ubiquiti out there. Oftentimes we'll find Alexa and Google. We find some Chromebooks. We'll report this information, tell you if it's there or not. And also, if we kind of drill into this, you can see we'll give you the MAC address. We'll tell you the ports that are open, how we found, and when it last appeared. So if you see something that just came up a few weeks ago, or maybe just last week, that's something you could potentially take action on. We can also kick in the quarantine if we need to. There's a lot of stuff we can do from Discover, but this helps you, back to that earlier graph we had, right, of asset visibility. You know, if you're doing security from a one-on-one perspective, it's what do you have out there? What do you need to defend? What do you need to make sure is patched? All those types of things. But if you can't find what's out there and you don't know what's out there, and you can't answer the question, oh, I think I have 10,000 machines, or no, I have 12,362 machines that I know I'm out there, I've verified that they're on my network, gives you a lot more confidence to be able to go up the stack and get to looking at privacy, looking at incident response. Because I think sometimes in kind of the knee-jerk reaction or in the heat of the moment, I've witnessed customers kind of start from the top and go back. But fundamentally, starting at the bottom and that day-to-day, that meat and potatoes of seeing what's out there is a fundamental notion that really needs to be looked at. So as we start looking at not only what we've discovered, we can put that stuff into locations, We can tell you kind of where it's at. You can put it down by building number. We go in to start looking at, we've got the agent out there. Now that the agent's out there, what all can we do? What all can we look at? There are multiple ways that we can really look at machines that are on the network. Once we get the agent on, one of the more popular areas, and one of the areas I like to emphasize coming from the background I have of software deployment, is a good majority of vulnerabilities that customers see on the network are from old software being installed on machines. Old versions of Chrome, old versions of Zoom, old versions of Wireshark, you name it. And so what we've done with Tanium is built a package gallery for you of the most up-to-date catalog. We've curated it for you. You don't have to go out and figure this out. And so all I have to do is go into this catalog, pick out, you can see a lot of different things here. I can pick out whichever one I want. So if I want to bring in Notepad or Office or Zoom, I just simply click import. And then that package is available for me to go out and deploy to my endpoints. It'll be pop into our library. In that library, we will show you, no matter how it was, the third-party package was installed, we'll show you who's got it and who needs it. And then you simply can put those into what we call a bundle or a baseline, so that in your agency or your city or your county or your school, you can create a baseline for the teachers. You can create a baseline for the officers. You can create a baseline for the water department or the sanitation department or the HR department, and make sure that they have the most up-to-date baseline information installed, or that it gets updated. One of the more popular areas in schools is simply to update the browsers. So they encourage teachers and students to use a certain browser, but as we all know, people have kind of a preference on browsers, and so they might install Firefox, or they might install another browser. And so by using Tanium, you're able to update those systems. This also could apply for unified communications. So like Zoom, Teams, WebEx, keeping those updated so you don't have vulnerabilities. You could do that using this process. An example that happened during COVID was that there was a unified communications platform that wasn't approved by that particular state. And so when they went home for COVID, they actually used Tanium to remove that unapproved communications platform from their endpoints to make sure no security vulnerabilities were in place for that. So I've been talking a lot. Michael, I just want to check in, make sure we didn't have any questions in the chat that needed to be answered. I think that silence is a yes. So I'll bring this chat down here. So, so the question was around solar. We have a question, thank you, Amit, from around SolarWinds, and I want to pull up an article for you to show you kind of what Tanium did when for the SolarWinds scenario. And so we have what we call our emerging issues blog, which I'm going to pull up here. And because we have 30 million endpoints around there, what we do is typically get an early warning, an early indication of how, of what compromises are out there, what vulnerabilities are out there. And so you can see on the right-hand side where we published articles, usually within 12 to 24 hours of a vulnerability coming out. So you can see down here, we've got the SolarWinds kind of response. And so we were able to help customers address SolarWinds. We actually have some new employees who were parts of the teams that helped with SolarWinds and finding, not only finding it, but remediating it. So we'll actually give you kind of right now what things I need to do to remediate, but also as we'll continue to update that article over time. So Print Nightmare is a good example. So Print Nightmare, for those of you maybe not been around for a while, when it first came out, we published steps on how you can actually go in, remediate this, disable the print spooler. We can quickly do that, and I'll show that a little later on. But effectively, with Tanium, you can respond to zero-day attacks, and because we are so widely deployed, we're able to respond quickly to those, publish these articles, and on top of that, you get an extension of Tanium, a security expert with Tanium, because we have folks like Melissa Bishoping, see here, that as a part of the Tanium support model, we actually help you remediate. So if you find that you're in the midst of an event, you can contact Tanium and say, hey, I think we're having an event, or I think things are going on, and Tanium will jump in and help, because there's already probably another customer who's having that. So that's kind of our response to 0 days, and I'll show you that a little bit more on the as we demo and get into the spooler. A couple of the questions that Terry asked an issue if updates are going from one secured enterprise environment to another. We do have the capability to run multiple Tanium instances. I'm sure Mr. Ryder can give you more information on this. He works a lot with the federal side of our Tanium practice, where we have customers using Tanium on secure networks and public networks, et cetera. And so they actually have updates that they, and an update process that we're able to kind of make sure happens across those multiple environments. And as far as 0 day, we've talked a lot about that so far. We'll look at it for the spooler example. What we do is we take the information from a Microsoft or from another third party and make that where it's digestible to Tanium. So if you look right here, kind of what we're actually, we actually publish the commands you can use to get visibility and find out what you need to do, and then another query here, and then we give prescriptive guidance on that of how you can do fix those 0 day exploits. So disabling the print spooler was a very popular early response to Print Nightmare, for example. And again, our support teams will help you with this. That's one of the reasons I love Tanium so much, is that our support is second to none. We really go out of our way to make sure customers are happy in using our product. And to be clear, when we patch, and we're going to talk about patching, we use whatever patch comes out from the vendor. So Microsoft has to have a patch available for us to be able to send it, but we do provide remediation for those 0 days. I think Mike's got another set of answers in there for the chat. So I'm going to go back to our console and just quickly, as we were talking about the we were talking about responses. So say I'm going to do running services and spell that. So if I want to go out and find, for example, what's running on systems, I could basically look for the print spooler as this comes back. Do services instead there. And so we can see that the machines are coming back of what systems are running. Most of these are Linux, so I'm actually going to go to the Windows systems here. And so we can see quickly that things like the DNS client, for example, are in there. Here's the print spooler, which I can also filter But again, this is real time. I'm able to go out and see this, and very quickly I could deploy an action. So I could go out to that machine and quickly disable or stop services for that with Tanium um, to quickly respond to that 0-day example of the print nightmare. And that's one way we remediate using Tanium. We did talk about deploy, where we update third-party patches. I'm going to go into patch right quick so you guys can see that. We can patch Windows machines. We can also patch Linux machines and repos. And we can also very soon be able to patch Mac systems. You can quickly see in our visualization here, we're able to tell you what machines are compliant, which ones aren't, which are some of the most important patches that you're missing. And we also do this based on year. When we go into customers' environments, in a POC environment, we'll typically find where customers have patches going back to, the worst one I've seen so far is 2012. Most customers go back to at least 2015 or so. And what we're able to do is then, after we collect this information with our patch process, we're able to go in, create a baseline reporting of patch list. What do you want to include in those patches? Is it security updates, update rollups, is it service packs? We can send those out. And then over time, you can see which systems are compliant, or excuse me, which ones are applicable, which ones are installed. And we can apply that out to the systems very, very quickly. As I mentioned earlier, the Air Force was able to patch for WannaCry in about 41 minutes. We've seen a lot of others do patches very, very quickly. You can see in our patch list, for example, we had Print Nightmare, kind of an example of what we do for Print Nightmare. And here's the CVE that was associated with it that would then get sent out to the specific machines. We do have maintenance windows, which are very important to a lot of customers. They have certain times of the day that things can get patched. Maybe at school, you have to wait till after 4 p.m. to patch systems, or if you are a state agency, maybe your agency closes at 6 to the public, so you can start patching systems after that. We can do a varying array of complex scenarios. And our goal here with patch is to make it super easy. So we take these patches, create a patch list, and then deploy that out. And the way we deploy that is, again, we use that Tanium architecture. So we take the client endpoints themselves, split that load up. So instead of having to have a 1 gig patch come out to each and every system, we're going to split that up across your endpoints. And that's how we're able to get that speed and scale. I was on site earlier this week. We had about 1,500 machines, and in less than an hour, 1,000 of those machines had been patched. We were waiting on students to go home after 4 o'clock, but we kicked that job off, and by 5 o'clock, 1,000 of those machines had been patched. And that's how quickly we can get things done in environments. And just double checking on chat here. So one of the things we can't tell you is for BIOS updates is a popular question. Thanks for the question and the cheers there. So I like to call it the born on date. So a lot of times BIOSes do not get updated on machines, and so we can quickly see their born on date, and by that we can see machines going back to 2011 or 2012 or 2010. So if you need to look at machines for replacement, especially some of those earlier machines back in 2010, et cetera, maybe didn't have TPM chips, they're now required by Windows 11, but we can see that and bring that information. As well, we can turn around and target and deploy as long as your BIOS updates are supported from Windows. We can send those out, or if you have other ways to support BIOS updates, we can send any job out. We can run any command. Tanium at its nutshell, as long as you have a command line, and you can do that at command line on that machine, we can automate that with Tanium. There's no need to kind of reinvent the wheel. So I want to, in the time we have left, hit a couple other ones. We've talked about finding stuff in Discover, finding those machines, getting that visibility going. We talked about once the agent's out there, being able to deploy third-party patches out to machines quickly. We've also looked at patch, where we can go out to OS and patch Windows. We can patch Linux, soon patch Macs, get that done very quickly. And what we want to kind of get across from a Tanium perspective is we have taken the visibility to take action so that you're not getting popped because you haven't patched your machines, you haven't updated third-party patches. But we can also, from a threat response perspective, show you, actually, let's go to comply first. So after we've got things kind of out there, agents are working, we're looking at things, we can help you with compliance. So if you're looking at like NIST or CIS benchmarks, we can show you if things are compliant or not. There's lots of different things we can look at in the university space specifically. We've seen customers reduce their audits for their accreditations and some others. Or if you have agency check marks where once a year you're having to prove some kind of compliance finding, we can automate that for you and reduce the time spent on that. But we can also, from a vulnerability scanning perspective, do that in the same console to tell you what endpoints are vulnerable, what vulnerabilities you have. If you look at here, which ones are high scores, which ones are medium scores. But then we can remediate that in the product itself. So by going to, I think it's 1401, we can look at these systems, show you what vulnerabilities you have, but then go over to our patch, which we covered before, and do sniper patching, right? And the important part here is not that we can do sniper patching. I think that's important in going from one system to the other, but we can also roll back. So if you look at the uninstall button here, if it's supported by the OEM, we can do that and uninstall a patch. And what that's going to do for you is make that patch cycle shorter. Most of the customers I've worked with in my 10 months at Tanium have reduced their patch cycles from either 6-week or 4-week patch cycle to a 2, maybe 3-week patch cycle because of this uninstall feature. Because they know if a oops goes out, which I've worked for Microsoft for 20 years, I saw some oops, and I would have loved to have this uninstall button. And so we have that with Tanium and our solution to be able to kind of pivot and uninstall if needed. So that we're able to look at your compliance with both NIST benchmarks, et cetera, but we can look at your patching and vulnerabilities and pivot on that. And then we can also help you with vulnerabilities, threat response. And that is where, if you look at alerts that you're getting and you're doing some threat hunting and you want to see what's out there, Tanium can help you do that. You can see some of the areas that we cover, who's enterprise hunting, the help. We can go out and actually get a hold of endpoints. We can, from those perspectives, build up a live response to that. So if you need to kill processes or make sure no processes occur, look for MD5 hatches, we can do that. We can save evidence. So by having the threat response solution, we can take an actual machine and save all the things that happen on that machine and log that information. We can get notifications out to systems. You can see by the different alert intel sources where they come from. We have our own signals, which are built from a lot of industry standard scenarios. You can look and see the results over time, who's got it covered, and we can go out and see which machines have the highest number of alerts. So we're looking at this machine here. You can see some of the things that we're looking for, and we are basically looking for the common scenarios that you see from a threat response perspective, from a security perspective, either processes, some things like command. You know, you look at some of these here, and you probably, if you're a security type person, you've been through some of these different scenarios. We expose the paths for you of where these are occurring, and then give you some information behind that intelligence so that you know what has happened out there, areas you need to look at. And if we look into this details on this, we can see kind of the name, the source, what's happening, all those types of things, the number of accounts that are potentially impacted, the machines that were impacted, all from the signals perspective. So there's a lot we can go into threat response, and I can tell you the threat response itself. I know I've seen a writer do a session just for an hour just on threat response. So this is definitely something that we've seen customers use, take advantage of from a threat response perspective. And I see in chat we've actually got some questions on our asset module, which we haven't gone into, so we'll flip over to that. And in asset, this is where we actually do store stuff in a database. So everything else I've shown you is pretty much a real-time scenario. We store quite a bit of information on each endpoint at the endpoint. We don't bring it all back necessarily unless it's needed. And so with asset, we actually transfer that information back to endpoints, back to the Tanium service. And so if you look at some of the reports that we have, if we look at all the assets here, we're going to see kind of your standard typical stuff. So serial number, operating system, IP address, the user. If we drill into this, we could see more detailed information. So the UUID, the manufacturer, the CPU information, the primary user, and that's something we determine based on the frequency of logins on that machine. We can see the applications installed on that, if they are uninstallable. And more importantly, we can see one of my favorite things, and I think one of the things was asked about in chat was with our asset solution, we can actually see not only who's installed this, but who's using it. So if you look at Visio here, we've got 68 installations of it. 57 have used it, but 11 haven't. So you can reclaim software in your license agreements, make sure that you're properly licensed, but you can also take the unused portion and make that a part of your reducing attack surface from a security perspective. If applications are sitting on systems but not being used, that means you can get rid of those and you won't have to patch those. You won't have to worry about security vulnerabilities on those. So we provide that information for you. There's a state out west that saved, I think, close to at least $1 million, if not $2 million on their software reclamation. But I'm definitely seeing this morph into more of a security issue of not having software on machines that are not being used. Let me just double check to make sure all the chat stuff. Taken care of. Looks like we're good to go on that. All right, so we've talked quite a bit about different areas that we can help out with from an asset, and we really focus on kind of the bottom part of this chart. We talked a little bit about cost optimization and how we can see what's being used, what's not being used, how you can maybe reduce your licensing cost or your attack surface. Now we're going to look at data privacy. That's one area we haven't really taken a peek at, so we'll just quickly look at that. And with data privacy, one of the things we can do is go out and find information on your endpoints by some of the rules that you see here. So HIPAA compliance, GDPR, CJIS, you name it. Basically, we can go out and do that in our Reveal solution. So if you look at credit card numbers, for example, we're able to go out, find any of these file types here that may have patterns that relate to a credit card. And then as you go out and look at the machines, and we'll report these back, you can go into each alert, if you will, and see the results of which systems are reporting that there's credit card information out there. So these rule sets that we've kind of come up with. And then you can look at those and approve those. And once those are approved, that you know that that data shouldn't be out there, we will then put that into the system and look for that on all your all the Tanium clients coming in. Very important distinguishing thing is we don't remove that data. We typically would have you use another system or have Tanium work to maybe move the system to OneDrive, the files on the local system to a OneDrive or some other secure file storage instead of having it out on the endpoints. But we can do this for just about anything you can imagine. You can see some of the examples here, but we can, again, help you easily create stuff for data privacy using our solution set for that in Reveal. And then one other thing I want to make sure from a data privacy perspective or lateral movement security perspective is with Impact Solution, we're able to go out, look at your end users, see how much those end users can move around in your network if that account were to be compromised. So we're basically able to get a list of users, tell you where they have impact, either inbound or outbound, how many sessions they currently have active, and we classify that high if it's a certain number of users or a certain number of machines. And a lot of customers don't know this information, so by having Tanium, we're able to really show stuff that maybe no one knew. Maybe you inherited a system and you didn't have a lot to do with setting it up, and someone put a lot of people in domain admins, for example, or in some other administrative group. So we look here and there's a lot of indirect members here that potentially could compromise your systems. This is some of the information that Tanium can make available to your systems and show you the systems, the endpoints that could potentially get lateral movement in your network. There's some charting here that we talked about. All the information, we'll look at that, is provided in our trends boards, which there's a lot built in. So for executives that we want to have kind of high-level reporting, we can provide all sorts of graphs for you. You can see here, we're looking at manufacturer of the system boards, the endpoints that were online, etc. And then one of my favorite boards is performance. And the reason I'm showing you that is it has some, what I think of the prettiest graphs out there. So in performance, we're actually collecting information of application crashes, system crashes. You see CPU usage. We have customers that use performance to make sure their endpoints are performing properly and that security agents aren't necessarily causing issues. So maybe you're rolling out a new security product or a new endpoint product or a new overall enterprise product, and you want to make sure it's not using CPU or disk. We can show you that in this module And again, all these types of graphs and trends boards are included, and you can make those available to any level of users, from executives to a department, might be a school board, a county board, county commissioners, maybe the sheriff wants to see this stuff. So there's a lot of different ways we can expose this data for you using Tanium to really give you that visibility that we talked about, so that the data is not sitting in silos and is able to be shared across your organization. So just want to double check the chat one more time before we kind of tie things up here. Yeah, so a couple quick shout outs in chat. For those folks that are maybe going to Nickel Giza in Asheville, I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in person in Asheville. We're going to be out there the 20th and the 21st of October. I've been covering the state of North Carolina for almost 2 decades, so I've met a lot of you in my travels, and look forward to seeing meeting new people and seeing some old friends out at Nickel Giza in Asheville. We'll have a booth and out there, so looking forward to that. And then also had a question around the state contract. Tanium is available on the state contract, and the number is 208 T as in Tom. Again, the Tanium is available on state contract, and it's 208 T as in Tom. And just a question on the minimum specs of Tanium. Tanium client is pretty lightweight compared to other solutions that I've used. In general, we use about the minimum specs we'll run on is usually 2 gigs of RAM on a machine. 4 would be better. And then as far as hard disk space, we don't use that much, but thankfully, hard disks are getting so large where it really doesn't matter. So, all right. And I think with that, make sure you're putting questions in chat. We will answer them, and we're going to kind of tie things up with our Tanium presentations. There's a lot of other areas we can go into. We have a office building in Morrisville, North Carolina, Tanium. So it's the largest office outside of our corporate headquarters, which are outside of Seattle. So definitely leverage your teams. We're happy to talk to you about anything we've talked about today. The question was conference in Nashville. So there's a conference called Nickel Giza. So it's the local government conference. Most of your cities and counties around the area will attend. It's targeted at government, specifically more on the local government side is where I tend to see most attendees of that. But it's Nickel Giza. It's like NCLGISA. So NCLGISA is the name of the conference that we will be at in October. If you have any questions on anything we've talked about, feel free to reach out. I'm Tev Sanders at Tanium, tev.sanders@tanium.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Tev Sanders. Feel free to connect there. Happy to talk about anything. Come see you in person if it's appropriate for your individual agency, city, county, school, etc. And thank you for your time today.